Welcome back. We're now on learning outcome 5 in our theme 1 and on page 102 in our textbook, moving between languages and understanding what is multilingualism. Let's start off by talking about when people speak two languages, we call them bilingual. We might say that most people in South Africa are bilingual because they understand English Afrikaans, or they have their mother language, their home language, and then a secondary language. Also to note here, people who speak more than two languages are considered multilingual. So if you know how to speak fluently three languages, then you are multilingual and not bilingual. However, do note here that people tend to really speak both languages with the same amount of fluency. Therefore, it's to say that even though you know two languages, you might not be able to be as great in one than the other. You might prefer to speak more English than the Afrikaans, or you might be better at Afrikaans than English, and so on. They have examples here as well, that to say here, for example, the speakers of two main language groups like Nguni and Sotho are very accommodating, able to switch from one language to another to enhance the communication. They very often use words from other languages to be better understood and not care that much to speak one pure language. They go on to saying more examples here that entire nations are often bilingual or multilingual. And this is the case of South Africa. We also have Belgium that speaks three languages, Dutch, German, and French. Canada recognizes English and French as well. I think that's in Montreal. Switzerland is a multilingual nation, has four official languages, which is French, German, Italian, and Romanish. As mentioned above, South Africa has 11 official languages, so we have quite a bit. You can read through the examples here to just note all the different sort of languages there and how it can also impact, the groups there. So I'm going to move on to the bottom here of the page, which is to show some examples of the words or phrases used to greet people in Setswana, Zulu, Xhosa, and Tshivenda. Oh, sorry, I just went ahead in my thing there. So just look at the examples in the different languages on page 102 and 103. So I want to read all of them because I'm probably going to mess up because I do not have the best phonology, which goes back to our words of pronunciation here. But just informally, one could respond with agi. The question, how are you, would be okay in the Setswana culture. In Zulu, Kuzani is the plural form, which is it is going well. In Xhosa, Molo, which is to greet one person. In Tshivenda, Nindi Mazari. Okay, we'll have to practice that. So this is all the different sort of greetings they have in different languages here. So multilinguals need to engage in language negotiation. That is to say, in which language to use in a given situation. So they might take this out in a test exam is to explain language negotiation. That's just a nice little test question, I think. And this is to say which language should be used in a given situation. These decisions will depend in power relations. All South Africans will clearly remember the historical riots in 1976 when black children protested against the government's policy forcing children to study Afrikaans. Sometimes a language is chosen as a courtesy to others when to speak English if English is not the mother tongue of any of them. And then, of course, they're giving more examples here. I'm just reading through because it's quite more beneficial for all of you to read through all the examples. It provides a lot of context to what we're talking about here. Here's an example from a French professor at Duke University. Speaking a foreign language is for me and my students a chance for growth, for freedom, and liberation from the ugliness of our received ideas and mentalities. Many people use foreign languages to escape from the history of oppression in their own languages. Perhaps it is easy to think of language as a prison house for semantic, syntactic, pragmatics, and phonetic symptoms are merged into the social system form, and there's no escape, except though from learning another language. You can just read through all the examples that they have there. And I'm going to move on to page 104, and we're going to learn about the different sort of dialects that is put in here. Co-cultural groups often develop argot, which is a separate way of communicating, which is a way of distinguishing themselves from the outsiders of the group through the language that they've learned there. Insiders can understand what is being said, while outsiders cannot. So another way to sort of use that understanding of it could be slang or jargon. But of course, I want you to use the actual technical term that is put into the textbook, which is the argot there, that's in bold on page 104 in your textbook, which is to say that the insiders know what is being said and the outsiders cannot because of the way of the speaking and the language being used. They do give examples here, gangster, hoodlum, on all sort of things that would be inclusive in the language. The next one is pidgin. They say Fanagolo is a pidgin, a more simplified language, which is to simplify because of the crossing of different cultures. And going through to the example here, they say here that in South Africa's gold mines, to allow communication between white supervisors and African laborers during the colonial and apartheid era is essential a simplified version of Zulu and Xhosa. About 70% of the lexicon is from Zulu, incorporates from English, Dutch, Afrikaans, and Portuguese. Learning another language is never easy, and therefore there is like almost a third language that is created here. So they're just talking about here that sometimes you're trying to, when speaking to someone who doesn't speak your language, simplify the language that is there. The next part, and you can just read through all the examples that they put here of language. I'm going to be moving on to the next one, which is in our last one here on the page, well, second last, language acquisition, which refers to the process of just learning another language. Therefore, if you want to learn French or Zulu or Xhosa and all that, you'll be acquiring a different language, therefore language acquisition. Our last part and term to learn is interlanguage, which is the implications of teaching and learning of another language. Interlanguage refers to the type of communication that emerges when native speakers of one language are speaking in another language. Therefore, the first language overlaps into the second language, and this creates a third way of communicating. People react differently to living in a multicultural world there, and some work hard to learn other languages. But sometimes these sort of language can overlap and have different meanings and create a third way of communicating there. Remember to take notes as you go, and also to look on the side of your page, the what do you think and the info bytes that's been put there. Translation and interpretation. With all the languages out there, how do people understand each other when they speak different languages? Well, you've probably seen it on the TV, you've probably seen it on shows. There's usually someone that's going to translate what is being said, and therefore an interpretation will come out of this. You'll see this in internationally, nationally as well. They will need translators for those that do not speak the language that is being spoken at that time. So in the current presidential announcements, we'll need a translator. We'll have to translate what is being said. In this case, it would have been sign language. So the terms to learn firstly is, what is translation? Translation means to refer to the process of producing a written text into something written in another language. So it's producing sort of a transcript, a written piece that is being translated of something that was in another language. What was originally in another language? So let's just say that I want to convert what is being said here in English into French. What is being originally here in English on this page would be called the source text. And what I want it to be translated to, which is French, would be the target text. Okay, are you guys still with me? They have another example. Master Harold and the Boys is translated into Zulu. The original text was written by the author, is the source text, which could have been in English, but now the target to be put into a different version, which is Zulu, will be the target text. Therefore, when we're translating, we're trying to put whatever it is being processed into producing a written text is from something someone has said in a different language. That's the process of translation. Okay, so what is being put into writing from another language into this language in a written text form, and then something that is within a original sort of text that must be translated. So if you want to translate something from English to French, the original would be the source text, And then what you must be translating to the next one, the French, will be the target text. Next is interpretation. This refers to the process of verbally expressing what is said or written in another language. What is to be interpreted here? It can either be at the same time or when the interpreter is going to speak after, during the break. So you'll probably see this on TV a lot when you have a guest, then they'll say what he meant was. This is someone that's going to translate, also interpret verbally what has been said or written in another language. They're going on to say that language are entire systems of meaning and consciousness that are not easy translating to another language word for word. And often when we are translating into a different language, you can't get the exact meaning always necessarily at the same time. Regarding the dilemma regarding color, the English word for brown might be translated into different French words, and how that word is used could be completely different to what is really intended there. In the next section, we're going to look at the issues of equivalency and accuracy, which is going to make part of our last part of today's clip and theme 1 as well.